And we are live. Welcome to Facing Stories, a new video series from the Facing Project. I am the co-founder of the Facing Project, J.R. Jamison. Last week we interviewed Kira Childers to talk about her storytelling through photography. She's been involved with past Facing projects. And this week we'll talk with Victoria Engelhardt, who is a teacher and a writer on facing addiction in Knox County, Kentucky. The reason why we're doing Facing Stories video series is an opportunity for us to revisit individuals who have been involved in past Facing projects to see where they are now. That might be writers, that might be photographers, that might be organizers, that might be storytellers themselves. We'll also talk to leaders in the field of community engagement and writing throughout the series too, to get their perspectives on storytelling and the impact that it makes in communities. As I mentioned, we have Victoria Engelhardt with us today. She served as a writer on facing addiction in Knox County, Kentucky. It's Our Move. The project was sponsored by Union College in Barberville, Kentucky, and organized by Union College with faculty and staff writers and community writers from the Knox County area, partnering them with individuals who had stories to share around addiction. That might have been individuals who faced addiction themselves as former addicts, or that also included individuals who grew up around people who were addicted to drugs in their family, and that also included some individuals in the book who work in the medical profession or counseling profession, who work with individuals who face addiction each day. The book launch for Facing Addiction happened last September at Union College in Knox County, and it was a pretty exciting event. 200 people showed up, national media was there, Senator Mitch McConnell came to the event and served on a panel, so it was really exciting to see the synergy in the room with high-level folks coming together to face addiction and to really hear these first-person stories. I met Victoria at the event. She and I had a chance to sit down and talk, and she shared with me that she was a writer on the project, and we had several things in common. I think one of which is that we're both, I'm a former AmeriCorps member, and Victoria serves on Teach for America, which was an AmeriCorps program. And Rebecca shared with me that, or Victoria shared with me, I apologize, that she wrote the story of one of her students from her Teach for America classroom, Rebecca. So I've talked a lot, Victoria, so again, welcome to the show. I want to give you a chance to talk to our viewers a bit about that experience. Can you share with us a bit about what it was like to write the story of Rebecca?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Well, I got involved with the Facing Project because of Jody Carroll at Union College, and I taught her daughter in class. And I was in a musical at Union, and when Jody came to see the musical with her daughter, she said, "Hey, I have a project I think you might be interested in. Would you consider helping write stories for a book about addiction?" And immediately, Rebecca came to my mind because I know the backstory of having taught her for 2 years at this point and knowing kind of like what her family situation was and what level of addiction that many members of her family had faced. I immediately knew, like, yes, I want to do this, but if I'm going to do this, I don't want to write the story of some random person. I want to write the story that I know best and a story that is so overwhelmingly powerful for me. And so when I approached Rebecca, I said, "Hey, there's a book that is going to be published about Knox County, and it's about overcoming addiction. And I feel like you're the perfect person to tell a story here because you've broken the cycle of addiction in your family, and I think everyone in Knox County needs to know about that." And she squealed, literally squealed with joy. I was like, "Yes, yes, will you please tell it?" And so after some conversations, we sat down one day, and I decided to do a real interview. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink. Handy water. And when I interviewed her, I have a background in journalism, and so I pretty much knew what I was doing, but I wasn't really ready for the level of intensity that I was going to get from a 15-year-old girl about her experiences, because I had a relatively stable, drug-free childhood that in no way really compares with Rebecca's. And so when she started telling me about her childhood, I just asked her to explain like where she first saw drugs and like when she realized that people in her family were addicted. And when I heard the stories about her as a small child and having to find her father passed out in the floor and her grandfather having to call an ambulance and thinking her dad was going to die, and then finding out that he was going to prison, and then she told me the really powerful story about the first teacher who ever allowed her to write poetry. And so when you read this story in the book, you see that Rebecca feels like poetry is her outlet. And so when she told me about the first teacher who ever told her to express her feelings about her parents and her other family members' drug addictions in poetry, you could just see that it was like it clicked with her, and it was the thing that made her feel the most herself. And so getting to see that was really powerful. And then as she told me more and more anecdotes about different times that she had had different experiences with drugs, and when she really realized that like she could never do drugs and that she was going to break the cycle and that she was going to be more than her family ever expected out of her, I realized that I could take that one story that stuck out the most to me and I could spin it into a narrative that went from like the one experience into a flashback that then moved into like kind of an explanation of like this is why she's living the way that she is. And that experience of just that one interview, it really deepened our relationship. She had been a student of mine, as I've said, for 2 years at that point. And when I first met her, she was shy and she was very reserved, and it was like pulling teeth to get her to say anything, but she loved to write stuff down. And I saw that she was writing poetry one day, and I asked her to stay after class, and I looked at her poetry with her. And as I saw her poetry, I saw that she had a gift. And so I had been working with her for 2 years at this point on her poetry, and to see that to I guess hear all the things I'd been working with her about, feeling better about who she was and where she could go and the possibilities that she had for her life, and seeing that like she had used poetry to really get to a place where she was strong and empowered and knew that she had broken the cycle, was just like one of the proudest moments I've had as a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having the opportunity to meet Rebecca at the event was really unique. For various Facing Project events that have occurred, sometimes storytellers will come to the events, which is a surreal experience for them, and sometimes they don't. But getting the opportunity to meet her at the event and meet you, as her teacher, but someone who wrote her story, was truly unique. And she is a dynamic young woman. And I was really taken when I read her story about how she has overcome the cycle. Her brother faces addiction, her father, her grandfather, others around her, and concerns that she had as a young adult growing up in the area and dating, and what perceptions people might have about her family, and all of these tough things that she is facing as a teenager. And the fact that writing has brought something out in her that is her outlet, and a positive outlet. So I did a little bit of research on you before this interview, and I know that you used to write for the Georgetonian, right, which was your school newspaper, and you are a very strong writer, and I know writing is something that brings you out and you really consider one of your strong passions. Tell me a bit about what it's like as a teacher and educator when you have a student such as Rebecca, who also has that same interest in writing, and you know that she's coming from a very vulnerable place. How has this matchup of the two of you sitting down and you telling her story, how has that strengthened your relationship in a mentor capacity?
It has really, it's given me so many opportunities to really be there for her, both inside of school and outside of school. She actually lives down the road from me, and so when she's unable to go to certain things, I'm always willing to come get her or take her home. And I've really, I was involved in a musical, as I've said, and after I was in the musical, she decided that she wanted to be in a play, and she had never done a play before, and I was in the audience on opening night, and you could just tell that, just like poetry, that she's just gifted in drama. And so to see her like take something that I loved and like make it into something that she loved and that inspired her, because she was actually there on my opening night, and so it was really great to see those roles kind of flip flop. But she really thrived in that role, and so since then she's gone on to be an assistant stage manager in another production, and then act in the school drama club, like improv night. And so I've gotten to really see her develop in her creativity, and I've really had the opportunity. I'm also her Beta Club advisor, and so to see her in Beta Club, she serves as our vice president, and so to see the way that even though she has had issues with her family being able to support her, the way that she still gives back to others who are in similar situations is one of the most inspiring things for me. For example, I think I actually cried this day because I was so overwhelmed with gratitude for really just like who she is as a person. We raised money for, we call them beta packs. They're backpacks that we send home with students over the weekend who don't have enough to eat. And she was kind of the inspiration for that program getting started in the first place. And so to see her go from like helping me like have the idea to really being the driving force behind it has been great. But whenever we got a large donation at Christmas time, she showed up with about 20 other students, and we had the entire cafeteria full of food, and we were able to pack 144 bags of food for students to take with them over Christmas break, and they were in Christmas bags, Christmas wrapping, and to really be able to see how passionate she was about giving back to other people just really inspired me to realize that like my role is more than as a teacher for her, it is as a mentor to really guide her in like what is possible, and that just because there are like circumstances that might mitigate what other people would see as opportunities, she's been able to take that, and I've hopefully been able to inspire in her a love of giving back to the community and like helping other people. And so I've really been able to see her develop and thrive, not just in the classroom. By the way, she's been accepted to over 20 colleges now, which is
awesome.
Amazing. Including Georgetown, my alma mater. Woo woo!
So of course you're trying to get her to go there, right? Like, send her that way.
Yeah. But I think the coolest experience of like mentorship I really had with with Rebecca, was whenever we had, it was called the Golden Compass Award, and this award was given at the end of last year, and it was for writers, and the school decided to focus on literacy, and she's on the literacy committee, and so they were really able to see her passion for writing and for poetry, and she was chosen out of all the writers in the school to be the recipient of this award. But the recipient of the award actually gives the award to a teacher. And so at the award ceremony, she presented me with the Golden Compass Award for inspiring creativity and developing her artistic like writing abilities. And that was one of those moments where I really realized that like my work as a teacher goes beyond just the classroom, but this is something that she's going to be able to take and use for the rest of her life, this like talent that I had a tiny part in helping develop. And so I'm really thankful for the Facing Project, because I'm not sure that this relationship would be at the point it is now without that experience.
That's great. We can't take all the credit for that. Obviously, you're an amazing educator, and you've developed this great relationship with Rebecca in that way. So it has to be like almost 100% the two of you. But the interesting thing when I was listening to you talk, Kelsey and I talk about what he coins the axis of awesome, and it's this idea of the intersecting points of something you're good at, so that could be writing, something you're passionate about, which could also be what you're good at, which could be writing, and the greatest challenge you've ever faced in your life. And however those points intersect, that's really where your passion and your true sense of self for the common good comes out. And so it sounds like in some ways you found your axis of awesome as an educator, and it seems like Rebecca has found hers as well through this process. Can you talk a little bit about your own experience with using that term, or that term axis of awesome? Can you talk a bit about your own axis of awesome, and was there anything unexpected that happened during this Facing Project process that either reinvigorated something in you or has changed the way that you now act through your axis of awesome?
I can, but I'll have to pull up the text from her story, and I don't have the book with me, so give me just a second to pull up the text because I actually have something I want to read.
Yeah, absolutely. So, has she decided which school she'd like to attend?
As far as I know, she hasn't. Okay,
Yeah,
I found the story.
great.
Let's find the quote in here. Okay, I found it. My Axis of Awesome moment really was when I was interviewing her, because one of my biggest goals as an educator is to not only teach my students English, which is what I teach, but to
Mhm.
teach them how to really, I call it, own the places they'll go. And so I'm all about teaching them how to own whatever their future is and to own the options that they have, and to figure out that no matter what experiences they currently have or what past they have or what zip code they come from, that like they can create the future that they want to see for themselves. They have to work really hard and they have to believe in themselves. And so that's been my whole mission of being an educator. And then this is somewhat what Tracy said. This is what I turned into part of my story in the Facing Project, and it was, I used to write a lot of sad poetry until I realized how much power my words had in them and how much good I can do in others' lives by telling my story and giving hope and inspiration to kids like me. I don't want people to be sad about my life or pity me because I believe you have to suffer before you can succeed. I want them to see me becoming more than anyone ever thought I'd be. And that to me was the most powerful thing, because she gets exactly what I was trying to inspire her to believe, and it's something that now she is owning, and I know that she will continue owning as she goes off to college next year. So I'm really proud of Rebecca.
Yeah, that's really amazing. You know, that's one thing. So when we first started the Facing Project, we had people who were excited about it, thought, you know, this is such a great way to tell the stories of real people in society who are facing issues each day. But we also had a camp of people who thought, proceed with caution, because are you exploiting people by telling their stories? And I love that you shared that quote from Rebecca, because we hear time and again from storytellers that they want to tell their stories to help other people and get the word out there, and that they don't feel like it's exploitation at all, but rather it's assisting other individuals who are facing the same circumstances in their lives. The other thing I thought about when you were reading that, so according to varied statistics, there are about 23 million people living in the world who are facing addiction each day. And I imagine that might include others in the school district that you teach in as well, and individuals who Rebecca, sorry, is involved in class with. Can you talk a bit about how this experience being involved facing addiction in Knox County has helped you relate to other students who are facing addiction?
Yeah, so I've been able to take the book and actually read her story and read the other story that I wrote and read some of the other stories in the book to my students and then ask them to reflect on how it made them feel, how they can relate to it, what it's similar to, and giving them an opportunity to explain to me what they're going through, whether it's personally or with family members, has really strengthened my relationships with my students, because it's given me a background to understand where they're coming from, and it gives them more trust in me because they know that I understand and they know that I care and I want to help support them and that I understand what they're going through. But it also really helps me to be able to think through what they might be facing and how I can best inspire them and motivate them to not think and not dwell on what's happening now, but think about what could happen and what they want to happen. And it's really inspired me. I have several students who have had to move or who have had to move who they live with due to addiction. And they're some of the brightest students in the school, and they are eligible for scholarship opportunities that they probably might not have applied for had it have not been for persistent like, you can do this. This is something that you are capable of, and that, like, the power of believing in them. And so it's been really great because I've been able to see some of my students who maybe didn't have the most belief in their potential really thrive and develop and get into different programs like the Union Collegiate Institute, which is where they can start taking college classes as a freshman and in high school and take classes all the way through their senior year. And so to see them be able to really blossom through the relationships that we developed really makes me even more grateful for the Facing Project, because it was kind of the catalyst to being able to have a discussion about a topic that doesn't get brought up a lot in Knox County. It's something that's usually swept under the rug, and I honestly think it's because it's so commonplace that no one really thinks to talk about it, because it's just how it is. And so to really show my kids that, well, yeah, this might be the reality that you live in now, but it's not the reality that you have to live with for the rest of your life, and really getting them to see that and, like, take advantage of the fact that they have opportunities has been really powerful.
Have you found using the stories in your classroom has opened up the opportunity for students to feel comfortable discussing this part of their life that they may not have opened up and talked about before? And are they finding peer-to-peer opportunities to discuss in an educational environment what their lives are like, their own stories, and really create a support network in some ways?
You know, somewhat, to some extent, but that's actually, I'm in the middle of that vision coming true right now. I realized after we did the Facing Project stories in class and we reflected and we talked about them as a class that a lot of my students do have similarities with Rebecca's story and with many of the other stories in the book, and I realized that I needed to teach them something more relevant than just the Odyssey and Romeo and Juliet. So I did a Donors Choose project to get copies of a novel that I found that is by Jeanette Walls. It's called The Silver Star. It came out in October, and it's about two little girls, well, they're like teenage girls, and they have a mom who just continually abandons them. And a lot of times in Knox County, abandonment goes hand in hand with addiction, and I'm sure it does elsewhere as well. But what I've seen is that my students really, they struggle a lot with, how do I communicate with other people when my family isn't like theirs, and how do I still succeed when I don't have the people at home that other people have? And so I chose this novel as a way to get my students to really think about the intersection of abandonment, addiction, and power and privilege, and really, like, how that they can relate in some way or another, whether they have faced addiction themselves, whether they know someone who has, or whether it's just they realize it's happening in their community. And so we're actually going to start this novel whenever we stop having snow days, which will hopefully be Monday. And I'm really looking forward to giving my students the opportunity to see themselves in the protagonists of this book, and to really have opportunities to see that they're not alone, and not only are they not alone, but they can work together to create a better future for all of them.
That's great. And hopefully in those conversations too, much like with Rebecca, those individuals will feel more comfortable in having open peer-to-peer conversations in front of their teacher, right, about these experiences, which might lead down the same path as Rebecca to a really bright future that's ahead for her in that way. Tell me a bit about Teach for America. Now, as a former AmeriCorps member myself, I don't want to say we're a special group of people, but in order to dedicate, a couple of years of your life to service, to complete a number of hours and, in your case, courses for your community, and oftentimes put into another community where there might be low socioeconomic rates, people are facing poverty. Talk a bit about why you opted to go into AmeriCorps and what that means for you as an individual to choose that as a career path.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you asked that, because I was just telling this story to someone yesterday. But I didn't know about Teach for America until I won a pageant at Georgetown College, and they sent me to southeastern Kentucky to compete in another pageant. And I wasn't a pageant person, so I didn't really know much about the pageant system, like what it was going to be about. I didn't know really anything about southeastern Kentucky. To be frank, I didn't even know there were mountains in Kentucky until I was 17, because I'm from western Kentucky, where it's all flat farmland. And I had never really had a reason to come to Appalachia. So when I was at it's called the Mountain Laurel Festival, and while I was there as the Queen candidate from Georgetown, I met Mr. Louisville, and he was about to join Teach for America, and he told me about the organization and about how their mission is to ensure like that every student in America has access to equal opportunity with education. And that the whole goal is that one day every student in America will have like a quality education. And when I thought about that, I thought about my experience the summer before working with underprivileged kids in my community in Paducah. And I had never even known that there were underprivileged kids in Paducah until I had that job. And when I realized that the kids that I worked with came from zip code 42001 and I came from 42003, and I thought about the differences in access to opportunities that persisted between just one zip code over, I realized that, there's a really big problem going on in our country. And I found out that the Appalachian region had just opened in southeastern Kentucky, and they were just starting to place teachers there. And I realized that I had really two options. I had the option to choose to do what I thought I wanted to do, which was be a journalist, or I had the option to join Teach for America and give back. And I applied for both, and I decided I would go big or go home. So I applied for Teach for America, which is the best way to go big or go home with education. And I also applied to the Medill School of Journalism in Chicago, and I was accepted to both. And I had this moment where I really had to decide, like, am I going to be a journalist, or am I and live my dreams in Chicago and like think about like how I can like make myself better and like make money and care about like my opportunities for like telling all these stories, or am I going to like put my ambitions on the side and instead like think about like all the lives I could impact and all of the good I could help other people accomplish. And one quote really stood out to me, and that quote was really why I decided to join Teach for America. And it said, success isn't about what you do with your life. Success is about what you inspire others to do. And when I heard that quote, it really made me realize that, like, up to this point, I had been successful. But I knew that it was an empty success because it was like, oh, well, I have this award now, or, oh, I wrote this story. Oh, that was cool. Well, now it's over. But I realized that I could have a tangible impact that would keep going for years and years. Because when I thought back about my teachers and the impact that they had on me, I realized that here I was like 15 years later, and I could still remember my first grade teacher's name. Shout out to Miss Underwood if she's still out there today. And I realized that it was things like that. It was opportunities to make a difference that were what was really calling me. That was really where my passion was. And so when I realized that I was going to be moving to Appalachia, I knew that I had a lot to learn, but I also knew that I had a lot in common with my students because I was from Kentucky, and I knew that Teach for America's mission in Appalachia is that one day we will not exist here because we will have created an Appalachian Renaissance where all of the people who are passionate about what's going on in Appalachia will stay here and will care about the community, and instead of leaving and having brain drain and things like that, which I'm not really comfortable with that word, but that's usually how it's said, but that people will want to stay and they will want to thrive. And it's been really great because as I've been here, I've actually seen that change happening with the SOAR initiative, which is Saving Our Appalachian Region. And so I actually was able to take Rebecca to the SOAR conference, and she got to see Governor Beshear, and she got to see Hal Rogers, and she got to see all of these people who care about our region and who care about the future of it and who care about her education and who care about like her community and who want to see it thrive. And so to see like to think about really like that I could have gone some completely different path and that like those opportunities and those doors would have never been opened really makes me even more grateful that I did choose Teach for America, because it gave me the opportunity not just to give back and serve another community, but to truly like transform the lives of the students that I meet and encounter. And so I would recommend Teach for America for anyone who feels like that they're passionate about educating young people and anyone who really has a passion for like believing in what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Teach for America or AmeriCorps is in Rebecca's future too.
I think about that sometimes. Yeah.
You never know. You know, our stories are so similar. I wanted to be a travel writer in undergrad, and really thought that I would get a job with National Geographic and have the opportunity to travel around the world and tell these stories, and that's what I really wanted. And I had this intersection that happened to me during my senior year of college, where I was with a 2D tutoring him, and realizing his life and really getting to know his story. And he was living in the same zip code like you had mentioned. And I just couldn't believe that I had an 8th grader I was working with who could not read at all. And so then I had to start asking really deep questions about myself, about our educational system, which then led me to AmeriCorps and serving my term, which changed the course of my life and really made service a core component of all that I do. And life comes full circle, right? Now with Facing, I get to do both, focus on writing and focus on community engagement. You think, I mean, I know the answer to this, I assume, but I want to hear you say it. Do you think because of your experiences going into Teach for America, it's really created a piece within you of service that will forever be interwoven throughout your career?
Yes, absolutely, because I have really realized that my passion is ensuring opportunities for students. And I actually have been able to go back to school and get my master's in teacher leadership. And I don't really know what my future holds at this point, but I know that it's not the same as it would have been had I not joined Teach for America. Because now I see what is possible and what work still needs to be done. And there's no way I could walk away from this work now, because I'm too emotionally invested in it, and it is what brings me joy. Like getting up in the morning and seeing my students makes me the happiest person. They're always like, how are you so happy in the morning? How are you so positive every day? And I'm like, because I'm doing what I love, and I am doing it in a place that I love, and I'm getting to see you grow and develop and learn, and how could I not love that?
Yeah. You know, sometimes I say to folks that the best things happen in the unexpected events. And life truly is a series of unexpected events, and we try to plan and plan as much as we can. But it's truly when the unexpected happens, when things fall in place and fall in your lap, where the true change, I think, sometimes occurs. And I think, as you shared your story, that's how you ended up in Eastern Kentucky, and that wasn't where you truly saw yourself being in many ways. Do you see yourself being in Eastern Kentucky for some time?
Well, I could go either way. I've applied for a Fulbright to leave for a year and go to Taiwan and possibly be an English teaching assistant there. I should know in the next couple of weeks about that. But ultimately, if I went there, I would want to create pen pals with my students here to expose them to another culture. Because my friend did a Fulbright in South Korea my first year of teaching, and getting to like have letters, we drew concrete poems about Appalachia, and like they drew barns and fish and guns and all that stuff, and drew it in the shapes of or those shapes, and it was poetry. And sending those to students in South Korea and getting their poetry back was so amazing, and it really opened my students' eyes to like, whoa, there are other cultures in the world. Oh my gosh, there's so much more. And that was really exciting because they started liking South Korean pop music and like all these different things that I never would have seen them being interested in just because of that experience. And so whether or not I stay in Eastern Kentucky, I am really passionate about maintaining the relationships that I have with my students and really giving them more opportunities to see what's possible for them. But ultimately, I think it would be great if I could find an outlet, whether it be in the classroom or in an administrative role, or really even in some sort of community engagement role, where I could continue helping with the development and this renaissance that's happening in Appalachia. Because I think I'm here at the perfect time, and I think my students have the perfect opportunities as well as they start their lives and seeing that so much good, positive change is happening in the area. So I don't know what will happen, but my heart will always be here no matter where I go.
I think that's a great opportunity for you, and a great opportunity for your current students to have the chance to interact with another culture in that way. It's so important during that time, being young, having your eyes open to the world really sets you off in a new direction. And I think that's very wise and good of you to want to do that. Do you think you'd be involved in another facing project sometime in the future?
Well, I've actually been in talks with Monica about Facing Project 2.0 in Knox County and about what we can do next and like how we can continue the momentum that we built up in September. And so I'm really hoping that in the coming months I can help her with the next steps of what kind of performance are we going to do, like how are we going to get this into the schools, how are we going to get more people reading the project, all of that. But I think that if the opportunity presented itself to do a different facing project, I would be like the first person who would be like, pick me!
Yeah. Yeah, and if you move to Taiwan, you know, you could start facing projects there in that way. Well, I think you're an excellent writer. I love your passion, not only around writing, but around community engagement. I think we're truly connected souls in that way, and I know that we'll stay in touch over time. And kudos to you for doing such an excellent job on your student story, pushing her in the direction of excellence, and also using her story, among others in the book, to truly get conversations started in your community. So kudos all around to you in that way. And thank you for coming on today and sharing a bit of your story with everyone. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a series that we'll be doing 2 to 3 times a month, revisiting writers, photographers, storytellers, and those who care about writing, storytelling, and community engagement to share their stories with us about why they care about the Facing Project and why they care about connecting people through stories to strengthen their own communities. To read Facing Project stories, which are now in 20 communities across the U.S., you can visit our website at facingproject.com. Thank you again, Victoria. Please send our love to Rebecca, and we wish her well in her journey to higher education. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.